Hello, and welcome back to Intro to PvE, the series where I take you from a beginner to a rated R PvE superstar. This episode is covering Story Mode Terror from Beyond, or what we'll just call TFB. While you can one-tank this operation, you may want to consider bringing 2 tanks along. This operation is a step up from what we've been doing before, where EV and KP are kind of like pickup baseball. TFB is entering the minor leagues. It's not the show just yet, but there are mechanics you have to pay attention to throughout this raid. Otherwise, you stand a good chance of wiping your group. So, let's get into it. The first boss we're going to encounter is the Writhing Horror. This is a pretty simple tank and spank. The main tank will face the boss away from the group as it would do a basic frontal cone attack, and the rest of the players will stand behind it and damage the boss down. Once in a while, the boss will burrow and move away, but literally just walk over to it and resume doing damage. Ads will spawn a couple times throughout this fight. This is where the off tank or a DPS with a taunt will come into play. When the ads spawn, the off tank is going to taunt the jealous male and then run into this red pool of flowers. This will pull all the ads to the off tank, allowing them to be easily AoE down by the rest of the raid team. And that's pretty much it. There's not much to screw up here, just kill the boss, kill the ads, and move on. A few notes here on some of the trash pulls. These pulls in this long open section need to start by killing the Hypergate Vortex, which is this translucent space snatch. If you don't kill the Vortex, the ads will continue to spawn, so let the tank gather up the other mobs and then kill the Vortex as fast as possible. Secondly, when entering this tunnel, just mount up and run all the way through, and then murder all the frogs in a big AoE fest at the end of the tunnel. And then finally, we're going to defeat this gargantuan low ball by hanging a hard right and literally just walking around him. He doesn't drop anything. Alright, on to the Dread Guards. This is where actual mechanics are going to come into play. We're going to start by marking our targets here. So, Harad is going to be red, Kephess is going to be white, and Kelsara is going to be blue. This way, all of us Americans know the kill order. Red, white, and blue. America, baby. In this phase, you're going to start by DPSing Harad. After you do enough damage to him, he's going to become immune. At this point, you need to swap over to Kephess and damage him until you're able to interrupt his casts. Once Kephess is interrupted, you're going to swap back to Harad, and then repeat this process until Harad is dead. In this second phase, you're going to be killing Kephess. You're going to see these large green puddles begin to spawn beneath players. Do not stand in these puddles. You're going to need them for the next mechanic. So you want as many of these puddles as possible up to be available to you later in the fight. This brings us to Doom. Occasionally, you're going to see this big red text that says, Kephess has doomed so-and-so player. At which point, the player needs to go and run through 2 of the green puddles. The doom is marked by this red and black debuff, so once you see those disappear from your debuff tray, you should be good to go. Just make sure that all of your doom players run through puddles and you should be fine. DPS down Kephess and move on to the final phase of the fight. Now I can hear you asking, what has the tank been doing this entire time? Well, the tanks are going to be running Kelsara around the room. Kelsara will be applying these stacks of Pulverize to the tank, which increases the damage taken with every stack, so the tank should swap at around 10 stacks to make sure that the damage doesn't become overwhelming. It becomes almost instantly lethal at 25 stacks, as you can see here. However, if you don't get the other tank to guard or DPS to swap the boss off of you, the tank can always just die. In story mode, combat res resets at 30 seconds, so the tank can literally just die, which would reset all their stacks. The boss will run around for 10 seconds or so, after which the tank can pick up the boss and move on with their day. When Kephess dies and phase 3 begins, the doom mechanic will continue to happen, so please do not stand in these puddles unless you are doomed. And the final instantly lethal mechanic is marked for death. Again, red text is going to appear at the top of your screen that says, Kelsara has marked a player for death. And then a massive yellow beam will connect Kelsara to that player. That player now needs to run for their lives. If Kelsara reaches that player, she will kill them. Sorcerers and sages can help out the player by pulling them around the room. Otherwise, the player just needs to use any movement buffs or hold W away from the boss. And that's it. Kill the boss and you'll be ready to move on to the next part of the operation. These next ads pretty much have the same mechanic as the space snatches. You're going to kill the data cores first, then kill the droids. Otherwise, the droids will keep spawning on forever. So please just kill the cores first. Alright, this next boss is going to require some prep work. You're going to pair up each tank with a DPS and each healer with a DPS in the ops frames. So as you can see here, all of our DPS are in the right column and all of our tanks and heals are in the left column. Moving from the top now, you're going to want each row to click a button. You're going to want the top row to click the blue button, the second row to click the orange button, the third row to click the purple button, and the fourth row to click the yellow button. Once you get inside, double check to make sure that there are 2 of each color in your raid. Once you are sure that there are 2 of each color, we can move on to the actual fight of Operator 9. There are 2 phases to this boss, the click phase and the move phase. The click phase will go as follows. The ground underneath the boss will turn blue. One of the blue raid members must go and stand in the middle. The other blue raid member must go and click the glowing terminal. This will lower the shields on the 2 data cores surrounding the room. The rest of the raid must now run around and destroy these 2 cores before the timer runs out. Once these cores are destroyed, the floor will turn orange. Again, 1 orange player to the middle. The other orange player will go click the button. Everyone else destroys the unshielded cores. Repeat with purple and then with yellow. While this is happening, adds are going to be spawning from the far doors. One of the tanks should be assigned to gather up these adds and bring them to the middle of the room, which will give the player standing around in the middle something to damage while they're waiting for the rest of the raid to kill the cores. This sounds complex, but really isn't. Just be aware that when it's your color, you need to be in the middle either clicking or standing in the bid circle. The second phase is a lot easier. Operator 9 will properly spawn in the room, and the raid will begin to damage him down. Occasionally, he will go immune for 10 seconds. During this time, many circles will spawn around him with the 4 colors, and you just need to run through your colored circle. And that's it. Once the channel ends, you can go back to damaging the boss, and then just damage the boss until he's dead. This fight looks complex, and there are some mechanics that you need to understand, but once you know the basics of stand in the middle, channel, kill cores, and then run through your colors, this boss really isn't that bad. At this point, you should reset your raid frames to make sure you have tanks on top and heals in the bottom. This next boss we're going to encounter is Kephess the Undying. The entire first half of this fight is stupidly easy. It's just a tank and spank. DPS the boss down to like 50%, and then things will start to get interesting. You're going to see these massive pillars around the corner of the room start to glow blue. When you do, the tank should run to these pillars and everyone should follow them. During this time, a few players are going to be infected by nanites. You can tell who these players are by whoever has this large orange circle over their head, or check their debuff tray. If you have nanites, you must run over to the glowing pillar and begin to cast on it. Once Kephess is standing next to that pillar, you're going to break the cast by moving in any direction. This will interrupt your cast and cause the pillar to collapse, severely weakening Kephess for a period of time. Occasionally, massive circles will spawn on the ground underneath a player. Don't stand in that. We do our best not to stand in stupid here. If you are the targeted player, go stand relatively close to the pillar to help bring the boss closer to where he needs to stand for the nanites. When you reach 10%, you'll enter a burn phase. Circles will spawn. Don't stand in them. Everyone is going to be taking raid-wide damage, so pop some DCDs. If you have a sniper or a gunslinger, they should pop their ballistic shield here. Burn the boss down, and you'll be ready to hop directly into the final boss of the encounter. The terror from beyond looks intimidating, but isn't. The first phase is really simple. Just split your raid into 2 groups. On the right, you're going to have 1 tank and a single healer. On the left, you're going to have literally everyone else. Pull the boss, and then tentacles will spawn on the right and the left. Kill them. Both tentacles disappear when one of the tentacles dies, so that's why we split up the raid this way. By stacking the damage on one side, you're going to quickly kill the tentacles and move on to the next phase. After killing a tentacle, a couple things are going to happen. First, these unstable larvae are going to spawn at the back and begin to march towards 2 players. If you feel like killing them, you can. However, if they reach their target, they're going to do significant damage, so pop a DCD if you just want to face tank the damage. Secondly, the terror from beyond is going to spit out a bunch of adds that are going to run in a straight line out of the water. If they touch you, they're going to do a good chunk of damage, so just frogger out of the way and you'll be fine. Once you've killed 3 rounds of these tentacles, you're going to be sucked into the sky. This is where we have reached the end game. There are a couple of weird things about this section. First of all, there's no such thing as range here. All of your melee abilities and range abilities are able to hit everything in this instance, regardless of how far away they are. And line of sight isn't a thing, so your healers aren't going to be chasing you around the instance. Secondly, you're going to be using these rings to hop from platform to platform. If you fall, don't worry, it'll kick you back up to the top in story mode. The game is pretty generous like that. Now the raid should split down the middle. So the left DPS are going to head down to the tentacle on the left, and the right DPS are going to head down to the tentacle on the right. Please note that if you are not standing on the platform with the tentacle, you will not be doing any damage to it. You must be standing on the platform with the tentacle to actually damage the tentacle, otherwise all your damage will be absorbed. You can see here that there are some players who are casting from different platforms, and they aren't doing any damage. And as a DPS, that is a major problem, so you must go down and actually stand with the tentacle in order to damage it. The tentacle will occasionally do a slam attack, so if you want to help out your healer, you can hop off the platform and then wait for the slam to cast, and then hop back onto the platform. However, in story mode, it's not that much damage, so if you want, you can kind of just face tank it. For your tanks, you're going to be standing up on these top platforms in the outer ring, damaging the Terror from Beyond. Occasionally, the Terror from Beyond is going to spit at you and leave this big green pile of bile on the ground. At this point, you should swap platforms. The boss does a moderate amount of damage here, so if you have 2 tanks, feel free to tank swap whenever you feel like things are getting sketchy. Otherwise, just effectively manage your cooldowns if you're solo tanking and you'll be fine. When the tentacles are dead, these hypergate irregularities will spawn. At this point, the entire raid is going to run around the instance and kill all of these orbs. If these orbs are allowed to live, they're going to do a significant amount of raid-wide damage. So split up and contribute. DPS, tanks, and even heals should be running around blasting all these orbs. You will repeat this cycle 3 times until the Terror from Beyond enters a furious tantrum. This is supposed to be a burn phase, so the tanks should pop any DCDs they have left, but the boss will occasionally randomly swap targets between attacks, so his damage is pretty spread out and isn't exactly threatening. Burn down the boss at 3% and huzzah, you have completed Terror from Beyond. Terror from Beyond is a mechanic-heavy encounter that punishes you for not knowing what you're doing. However, once you understand the basics of the mechanics we talked about previously, you should be fine. If you have a grasp of the mechanics that we covered here, you're going to clear the instance with no problem. And that's it. Congratulations on taking your first step into some actually engaging PvE content. Until next time, don't stand in stupid. Ta-ta!